Hi all, this is a lecture on skeletal system. We know it plays a very important role in our body. So the system works as a support system for your body. It gives the body's shape, allows movement, makes blood cells, provide protection for organs and stores minerals. The system is divided into two. The first one is the axial skeleton and second is the appendicular skeleton. In this lecture, we will be concentrating on the axial skeleton. So what is your axial skeleton and what makes up your axial skeleton? This axial skeleton is made up of the skull, the hyoid bone, thoracic cage or rib cage and vertebral column, otherwise called the spine. Let's discuss the skull. Your skull is divided into two, the cranial bones and facial bones. You have six cranial bones. They are frontal bone, parietal bone, temporal bone, occipital bone, sphenoid bone, and ethmoid bone. These cranial bones functions to protect your brain. The parietal bone and temporal bone are paired, while the rest of the bones are unpaired. Your frontal bone makes up the bony part of the forehead, orbital cavity holding the eye, and nose respectively. It has sinuses and sutures. Sinuses are connected system of hollow cavities in the skull. It is connected to the nasal cavity. The two main advantages of sinuses are it make the bone weigh less mass and catch bacteria and viruses before they spread in the rest of the body. Next is the suture. They are immovable joints which connect bone to bone. Parietal bone forms the superior and lateral walls of the cranium. It has sutures but no sinuses are present in this bone. Let's go to the fontanelles. These are present in infants and commonly known as soft spot. They provide the skull with the flexibility needed to pass through the birth canal. This flexibility also allows your baby's brain and skull to grow during the first year of life. Later they will be filled with hard bones. Next cranial bone is the temporal bone. It is situated at the side and at the base of the skull. It has six constituent parts: the cheekbone or zygomatic process, external auditory meatus, also called external acoustic meatus or the ear hole, a bony bulge at the back of the ear called the mastoid process, then styloid process which is connected to the part of the throat and tongue, then the mandibular fossa which is a part of the temporal bone where the mandible fit in, then the last carotid bone through which the carotid artery passes to supply blood to the brain. Next is the occipital bone. It is situated at the lower back of the cranium. It houses the back part of the brain. Big hole here is called the foramen magnum. Then the occipital condyle where the first vertebrae atlas fits into. Then the jugular foramina. There are two holes from which the jugular veins come out. Then the hypoglossal canal through which the hypoglossal nerve transfers the canal. Sphenoid bone is in the middle of the skull towards the front. This is the most complex bone of the human body because of the shape. It looks like a butterfly and it also called the wasp bone. It has a pair of sinuses. It also includes sella turcica, which houses a pituitary gland, and the optic canal through which your optic nerve passes, and it has greater and lesser wings. The last cranial bone which we are going to discuss is ethmoid bone. Ethmoid bone is a very small bone. This bone forms the superior portion of the nasal cavity and the part of the nasal septum and part of cranial floor and orbit wall. It separates the nasal cavity from the brain and is located at the roof of the nose between the two orbits. It contains a crista galli, nasal conchae, perpendicular plate and also has two sinuses which help to drain out the nasal cavity. Maxillae is the bone of the upper jaw which is formed from the fusion of two maxillary bones. Maxillae hold the upper teeth. It plays a major role for mastication and communication. It is the second largest bone of the face. It also has sinuses. The palatine bone is a paired bone located between the maxillae and the pterygoid process of the sphenoid bone. It participates in building the three cavities within the skull, that is the oral cavity, the nasal cavity, and the orbits. Mandible is the bone that forms the lower part of the skull. It is the largest bone of the skull. The movement of mandible helps in opening and closing of the mouth and helps in mastication. Lower set of teeth is rooted in the lower jaw. The zygomatic bone is also called as the cheekbone. This bone is quadrangular in shape and it is paired. It is present in both sides of your face. Lacrimal bone is a small and fragile bone of the facial skeleton. It is roughly the size of the little fingernail and is situated at the front part of the medial wall of the orbit. This bone helps to drain tears from the eye to the nasal cavity. Hyphoid bone is the largest cartilage in the larynx. It is a U-shaped bone situated at the root of the tongue in front of the neck and between the lower jaw. It supports the larynx, pharynx and tongue. This bone do not articulate with any other bone and is connected to other bones via ligaments. It helps in talking and swallowing. Vertebral column is also called the spine. There are 26 vertebrae and these vertebrae are connected by cartilaginous pad called the intervertebral disc. We have 7 cervical, 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar and 1 sacrum and coccyx. Sacrum is a fusion of 5 bones while coccyx 4. They together form the pelvic curvature which helps us to stand, sit and walk. In this slide, we have an image of the thoracic vertebrae. It has a body, it has spinous process and transverse process and also a vertebral foramen through which the spinal cord passes. Then we have the sacrum and coccyx. Sacrum is a fusion of 5 bones and coccyx is a fusion of 4 bones. Together they forms the pelvic curvature. This slide shows the image of the first vertebral bone, atlas, and second vertebral bone, that is the axis. Atlas is connected under the skull and to the occipital bone, while axis is situated right under the atlas. The last part of the axial skeleton is the thoracic cage. Thoracic cage is also known as the rib cage. The main function of the thoracic cage is to protect her major organs. It has 3 parts, the sternum, ribs and thoracic vertebrae. We have 12 pairs of ribs. 1 to 7 pairs are called the true ribs. 8 to 12 pairs are called the false rib. And 11 and 12 pairs are called the floating ribs because it is not attached to the sternum. Sternum has 3 parts, the mandibrium, a body and a cephal process. The part which is shown in blue color is called the costal cartilage. Costal cartilages are dried cartilage of soft bones which help the thoracic cage to expand. The space between the costal cartilages are called the intercostal space and are attached with the intercostal muscles. That ends the lecture for the axial skeleton. Thank you for listening.